welcome back to my channel. Today I want to do a little haul. A little haul. Um, this is the inaugural haul on this channel. I have never done anything like that before, and generally, I don't like to buy too many books at once. Um, I always do have a number of books that are sitting unread on my shelf. I do like to have some. I do like to have a little bit of variety, but I do like to keep it to a reasonable number. I don't ever want to have more books, unread books on my shelf that I feel like I could reasonably get through in a year. Do I always get to them within a year? No, but I do like to have a fairly constant number of unread books on my shelf. So I'll read three, I'll go to a local bookstore and buy three. It's not exact, it's not a science, but I don't ever find myself buying like a ton of books at one time. However, yesterday I did a little day trip to Hudson, New York. If you're not familiar with Hudson, New York, it's this cute little town. It's day trip slash weekend trip distance from both the city and Westchester and the capital region. And it's a very, I would say they're on the front lines of the hipster industrial complex. They have so many little antique shops and vintage shops and little cafes and galleries and stuff like that. And it's very different from the surrounding rural area. But it's very cute, and I always do enjoy going there when I have the chance. And I found a place that I had never been to before. It's been there for a long time. They said they've been there since the 90s, but at least from what I could see. But I had never wandered over that far because it is a little bit off of the main street. And they had $3 used paperbacks, and I went a little nuts. I could have gone a little bit more nuts, but I knew there was a few bookshops that I wanted to hit up yesterday while I was in Hudson. But I went definitely a little bit more crazy than I normally do as far as book shopping. So I did want to go over all of those today. And yeah, so I went to three different bookshops. The first shop that I went to that I'm going to talk about was TSL Books. That's where I bought the vast majority of what I purchased yesterday. But then I went to another place. It's a used bookstore. I think it might just be called Used Books. That's what it said on the window. I've only been there once before. It opened about a year ago, and I think I was there like their opening weekend. Not on purpose, just happened to be there. So I went there again and I got a couple. And then I lastly went to this place. I think it's called the Spotty Dog, but it's a combination bar and bookstore. I didn't stop to get a drink by that point. We were pretty hungry, and when we got out of there, we did not linger for a drink. We bolted out of there and went to the pizza place because it was dinner time. But I did get a number of fun and exciting purchases in all three of those stores, so I did just want to sit down and make a video talking about them because hopefully they will all be featured as books that I have read on this channel pretty soon. So please stick around and see what I got yesterday in Hudson. Okay, so starting off at TSL Books, this is a place, it's much more than a used bookstore. They did have a ton of used books. They also had vintage stuff and antiques, and then upstairs they also had an art space. They had a bunch of modern art, and it seems like they do performances there, both like maybe theater and performance art. Don't quote me on that, but there was a couple of different theaters that you could go into, and it was a really cool little space. It was definitely like again off of the main kind of the main street of businesses that I think people usually stick on. So if you happened to be near Hudson, which there are a lot of people in a day or weekend trip distance from Hudson, so it is not entirely absurd for me to suggest that you also could be one of them. New York City has a ton of people and is only maybe 2-ish hours away. But anyway, starting there, first book that I wanted to talk about that I got there is The Complete Stories by Flannery O'Connor. Flannery O'Connor is not an author that I have read through much before. After I graduated from college, I decided that instead of just reading for pleasure, which I certainly do, But instead of just reading for pleasure, I did also want to start reading more classic novels just on my own as a way to just kind of keep my brain going. I did not want my brain to dry up and atrophy, and it certainly did not because I wound up getting a master's degree after that. So, um, uh, but anyway, I read some of the real heavy hitters. One of my old roommates was an English major and she recommended some Austen to me. So I read some Austen, I read some Bronte sisters, I read some of those like really heavy hitters when I first started reading classics. And then I do what I normally do with most things that I read, and I started just kind of immediately digging for hidden gems. And now I'm starting to pull back a little bit. I think I've realized that I've maybe been doing too much hidden gem digging, and I have missed a lot of the really famous works and really famous authors that I probably should read if my goal is to be well read. And that's a goal that's a very soft goal. I would read anyway, and I would probably read a lot of the same books that I'm reading anyway, even if I didn't have that goal in mind. But I think in order to enjoy some of those hidden gems, I do need to read from some maybe more widely read and appreciated authors, just because the widely read and appreciated authors are the ones that often kind of set the literary tone for an era. So picking up the complete stories of Flannery O'Connor feels like a way to kind of pull back and read some from an author who's maybe a little bit more widely celebrated and discussed and talked about than some of the more little like diamond in the rough books that I do like to read. This is seemingly a collection of stories, so this is one that I can kind of like work through slowly. It seems to be kind of it's a chonker. It's a real chonker. So I think that the fact that it's a bunch of different stories won't intimidate me. There is also, this is I think very precious. Whoever previously owned this printed out or cut out a bunch of different articles about Flannery O'Connor and just kind of like left it in the book. And I love finding little treasures like this when I get used books. There's a couple little treasures in some of these that I will show you throughout this video. But yeah, that is that. This is the complete stories of Flannery O'Connor, and I don't know if this edition is in print still, but I think it's just so beautiful. I don't know the significance of the peacock or the oak leaves, but I think that this is just such a beautiful cover. And regardless of what the current edition looks like, whether this is it or not, I'm glad that I have this one because it is very beautiful. And I'm not gonna not read a book because it has an ugly cover, but if a beautiful cover exists and that's not the one I have, it is a little bit upsetting to me. I do have an appreciation for stupid little out of print covers of classics, and I have a lot of those to show you. The next one that I'm almost definitely sure is out of print is this old Penguin Classics edition of Metamorphoses. I really have not read much Roman. Some of the really ancient stuff is pretty intimidating to me. I do want to read the Iliad and the Odyssey before the adaptation of that comes out next year. But other than that, I didn't really have a ton on my radar. However, someone that I work with actually was reading this like last year around this time, and she reassured me that it's really like I really don't need to be intimidated by it. So when I saw this copy there yesterday, I decided to just pick it up, give it a shot. And as I said, I do love stupid little out of print editions of different books. I think it's just so charming to have them on your shelf. As much as I do love my very much in print, very uniform looking editions of books, like I love my Penguin Black Spine classics, the ones that, you know, are still being made. I love my NYRB books that, again, are all the same uniform height and kind of same format. I do love a stupid little out of print book, and if you can get it for $3, you can't beat that. You can't beat that because like the new versions of like the Penguin classics, like you can get some that are less than 10, but like most of those are like $15, and you could buy 5 of these for that price. So it's a win-win in my book. Anyway, I don't know when I'm gonna get around to this. I have a feeling that the intimidation will have me put this off a little bit like for a little bit while longer, but I have it when I'm ready. I have it for when the mood strikes me and I decide, yes, Roman stuff, that's good. That's what I will read. Next up, I have The King's General by Daphne du Maurier. Daphne du Maurier has quickly become one of the authors that I have decided that I'm like, I just want to read everything she's ever written. I read My Cousin Rachel earlier this year, and then I read Rebecca just a couple of weeks ago, and both of them just very much enchanted me. So now I've decided whenever I see any of her books, I'm going to pick them up. I recently purchased The House on the Strand, which I'm hoping is the next book that I'm going to read by her. But then when I saw this one there, The King's General, I was like, sure, this is a sign. I'll pick it up. I actually really have almost no idea what this is about. I know it takes place during the English Civil War, so this is in a historical setting. Um, but it doesn't really matter because, as I've said, I think I just want to read everything that she's ever written because I've really enjoyed the things that I've read by her so far. If I stop enjoying it, then I don't need to. There's no pressure. But I just really, really like her writing style. I think that she does a great job writing characters. I think she does a great job at building tension. And I'm just excited to see what else she has to offer me. I think I said in my last video that there are a number of authors whose works I've decided I just want to read all of them of, and she's recently been added to the list. Let me know if you'd be interested in me doing a video where I just kind of go over all of the authors that I want to read the entirety of their works, because there are a few. We will get to a couple other of those sorts of authors in this video, but probably not all of them. So let me know if you would like a video of all of that. I can let you know what works by those authors I have read and maybe what works I want to read next, and maybe like what drew me to them, like what made me say, okay, yeah, I'm going to read everything by them. But anyway, that is The King's General by Daphne du Maurier. Or is it? I didn't really talk about it very much, but I said I don't really have much to say other than that I love Daphne du Maurier and I want to read everything that she's ever written. Next up, I have some Virago modern classics that I believe are out of print. Definitely all of the editions are out of print, but this first one I'm going to talk about is seemingly out of print entirely. I went on yesterday just to see, just because a lot of these books I had never heard of before. They were the sort of thing where I was browsing and something about it, something like maybe the name just kind of intrigued me. I looked at it, I read the back, and I was like, yeah, sure, let's give this one a shot. I really like that, especially if I'm at a used bookstore with a lot of cheap books. I do like just kind of like browsing in such a way that like is completely algorithm free, just kind of like looking at the spines and the covers and the titles and just being intrigued and picking it up and not feeling like it's such a big investment if I wind up not liking it, because again, it was $3. It was $3. So I love algorithm free browsing, but this first one that I talk about, it seems like it is out of print entirely. I looked into these books all a little bit more when I got home, and I cannot find any publisher that has this book still in print, and that is A Deputy Was King by G.B. Stern. And all I really know about this is it's about a rich girl being fabulous, maybe partying. It seems like a kind of a jazz age sort of novel, set in the 20s or 30s, which I believe is when it was written. I don't know a ton about this, and when I tried to look it up a little bit, one of the first search links was from a website, I think called neglectednovels.com or something like that. So it seems like this obviously at some point was celebrated enough that it made its way into a classics edition, the Virago Modern Classics edition with the ones with the green spines. These are out of print, but I know that like some people can get them at like used bookshops. But anyway, at some point, obviously, it was celebrated enough that it was able to be published into a classics edition, but not anymore. And it kind of intrigues me as to why. I don't know. I guess I'll just have to read it. I'll just have to see for myself. Having this YouTube channel now, it feels a little odd reading a book that's completely out of print, because it's not like I can necessarily recommend it to you if I wind up really liking it. At the same time, I hope I really like it. I never pick up a book not hoping that I'm going to like it. So, yeah, that's A Deputy Was King by G.B. Stern. As I said, we'll see. We'll see. We will see. The next three books, which are the last three that I got from this place, are also the kind of out of print Virago Modern Classics editions. However, these books are all seemingly still in print by other publishers. However, none of them seem to be that popular because I had never heard of them until yesterday. They actually had, I feel like they must have had someone who donated like their entire collection of books like these because there were a number of these editions and I hadn't heard of any of those books. So the ones that I'm showing you here were the ones that made the cut, I guess. But anyway, this next one is The Fly on the Wheel by Catherine Cecil Thurston. It looks like this one takes place in like turn of the century Ireland, and it kind of is how like a lot of classics are. A lot of the books that I wind up enjoying reading is just kind of like a bunch of people being dysfunctional together. But it just kind of follows a Catholic family and kind of, looks at seemingly they're like maybe a little bit more upper class and it kind of shows them being a little bit dysfunctional as in the way that upper class families tend to be with their scandals and all of that. And then I think maybe the Catholicism kind of plays into the scandalousness of some of those scandals. I don't know a ton about these. They all just kind of seemed Yeah, they all just kind of seemed like sure, they were like worth a shot. And at least with this one and the next two, like if I do like it, I at least can recommend it because there were editions available. Not as cute as this one. I will say the editions I could find were not as pretty. I'm glad I got the ones that I did, but they're there. So if I like it, other people can also read it on my recommendation. Anyway, the next one is The Chamomile by Catherine Carswell. This seems to be a Scottish author, and according to the back, this seems to be a semi autobiographical novel about a woman who comes back after some going away to school in Germany, and she comes back to Scotland, and she starts on her ambition to be a writer. I do love like a semi autobiographical novel written by a woman who's aspiring to be a writer. I just think that it's kind of beautiful. I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily an aspiring writer, but I have been doing a lot more creative writing in my free time. And so maybe at some point I will dare to say that I'm an aspiring writer. But for now, I at least really like reading about stuff like that. I think it's really cool to kind of really accurately get into the psychology of someone because they're writing about themselves. I'm sure it's a little bit polished. I'm sure that they're probably leaving out maybe some of the worst of it or the things that don't really kind of match the story that they're trying to tell. But I think that it's really nice because you can really kind of really accurately delve into this person's psyche because they are writing it as they see themselves. But anyway, yeah, that is the Chamomile by Catherine Carswell, and we'll see how this one is. I had never heard of it before yesterday, so. And the last one of the Virago Modern Classics is The Constant Nymph by Margaret Kennedy. This one isn't one of the green spines. This is definitely like a black spine. So I think that this must be like a different edition, like maybe a newer one than the other ones. I'm not sure honestly, but this one it looks like it just follows the daughter of a composer. But yeah, it just seems to be kind of like following this family who lives in Austria in the Alps, and especially the one daughter. And it's just kind of one of those things where it's like there's a bunch of people with various maybe difficult personalities. Chaos ensues, and I love a novel that's just let's put a bunch of people together with all of their different flaws and see the chaos that unfolds. Anyway, that's that. Um oh, I did want to going back to The King's General by Daphne du Maurier. One last little thing about this book, The King's General by Daphne du Maurier, is I did find another little treasure in it. I found this picture of this woman. I have no idea who she is. I would have to say that this picture was probably taken somewhere between the late 90s and early O's, just based on it being printed on Kodak paper and just kind of like based on what she's wearing and what's in the background. Um, no idea who this woman is, but if by some miracle you happen to know her and can somehow prove to me that you know her, I will send her this picture back. Because it was just kind of nicely, neatly tucked in this book, and I don't think that whoever donated it realized that that was happening. I find this a lot. I would love to maybe do a video at some point of just all of the little treasures that I found tucked in used books. Last year, also at a bookstore in Hudson, I found this one book. It was my copy of The Bell by Iris Murdoch. I found this postcard that was written, and it was really interesting to see kind of all of the little details about this person's life I could kind of glean from just this little postcard that someone had sent them being tucked in this book. And it felt like so almost like intimate. I felt like kind of like a voyeur. But yeah, I love when I find little treasures just tucked into books like that. Okay, moving on to the place that I think might literally just be called used books. I also got two out of print copies of books that are still in print. One of them is, again, by another author whose works I'm almost done going through, and that is Jane Austen. I got a copy of Lady Susan slash the Watsons slash Sandition. Out of her novels, I think I've read four of them. I still have to read Sense and Sensibility and then Mansfield Park. I was hoping to get to Mansfield Park by the end of the year. Now I own the last thing of hers that I have yet to read, and that is this beautiful little penguin classics cover of this woman riding this horse. I think that this cover is absolutely darling. I think it is very cute. And for $5, the price is right. I will absolutely take this cute little vintage copy of this for $5. And then the second book that I got at the store that I think might just be called Used Books is Iris Murdoch, An Unofficial Rose. Iris Murdoch, again, is another author who, if I see a book by her that I have not read yet, I will buy it. I've only read two of her books so far, but that is enough to tell me that I do want to read most of them. I've read The Bell, I've read Nuns and Soldiers. I think I'm going to read The Unicorn next. I have that on my shelf, and I think that that is going to be, if not the next book that I read, like a book that I read very soon. And then now I have my fourth book by her, which is An Unofficial Rose. This does seem to be one of her earlier novels, and this, like, pretty much all of her novels does just kind of seem to be like the sort of book that it's just like you put a bunch of dysfunctional people in a situation and chaos ensues, kind of like I said about the other books. But I kind of love that about her. She writes in such a style that's it's very interesting to me. Something about it almost feels Victorian, despite the fact that like her earliest novels were written in the 50s. But there's just something about her style that's just like, I don't know, it tickles me. It tickles me in a certain way. And I do plan to read as many of her books as I can. And I guess An Unofficial Rose is one of them. But the first ever Iris Murdoch book I ever read, The Bell, I also got at this store, so it felt really right to find another book by her and pick it up there. I know I need to read like her heavy hitters, like The Sea is one that I've seen a lot of people talk about, and then The Black Prince. I believe both of those are celebrated enough that they're in the like Black Spine Penguin Classics editions now. So that says to me that they're probably her most known and celebrated works. Additionally, I think one of those two won the Booker Prize one year or was at least nominated. So again, that says that I should really get to those. But I think I want to read as many of her books as I can, so I'll get to them eventually. I don't need to read her most popular works right away, I don't think. Maybe if they're her best works, it'll be a nice little treat kind of after I've read some ones that are of lesser quality. I don't know. I've enjoyed everything that I've read from her so far, so I'm just kind of along for the ride. We'll see. But yeah, that is An Unofficial Rose by Iris Murdoch. Okay, the last place that I went to is the place that I think is called the Spotty Dog. It's the place that's a bar and a bookstore. And I just stayed for the bookstore portion. They did have a pretty decent selection of things, and they had some other fun stuff in there too. Like they had a bunch of like fun like stickers and pins. I didn't get any of the stickers and pins, but I was very tempted. Did cave into temptation when it came to books. I wound up getting 3 books, which I almost never get that many books at full price, but I found a number of things that I was like, okay, I know I'm going to read them, so I might as well get them now and support this local business rather than maybe getting them from like Barnes and Noble later. The first one I talked about in my last video, my fall TBR, and that is Fledgling by Octavia Butler. Again, Octavia Butler is another author who I want to read everything by her, and I won't talk about this too much because I talked about it literally just in my last video, and I still have not read it yet. You want to know a secret? It's because I'm filming these two videos on the same day. I changed to fool you. But if you've made it this far in the video, you get to hear that little secret. So yeah. So anyway, yeah, I still have not read this, but it's about a vampire. It's by Octavia Butler. I've read 5 of her books at this point. I haven't read anything since I read The Parable of the Talents last year, so it's time. It's time. I talked briefly in my last video how I think a lot of my favorite authors are no longer with us, and that makes me sometimes a little hesitant to finish reading their back catalog, but I'm trying not to do that anymore. I'm trying just to go full speed ahead and just read whatever I feel like and just, read the authors that I know I like. Because if I've read all of their stuff, then I have a nice like perspective, a nice bird's eye view of their career, and I can always go back and reread them. And recommend what I think are their best works to other people. But yeah, so Fledgling by Octavia Butler. I hope to get to this soon. As I said, it is about a vampire, so October feels like the right month for this. And even if it didn't, I haven't read a book by her in too long. It's time. This will be read soon. Okay, next, speaking of books whose works I want to read the entirety of, is Leonora Carrington. I read The Hearing Trumpet by her earlier this year, and I was just so delighted. It will probably wind up on my like favorites of the year video when I do that at the end of the year. I don't see something kicking it off the, top 10 or whatever. I think it'll wind up being in that video. But Leonora Carrington didn't really write much in her life. She has some stuff. She has The Hearing Trumpet, which I've read. She had Down Below, which wasn't really fiction. It was more of just kind of like a memoir of her time in a psychiatric institution. And I read that. And it was, I think, worth reading, but it didn't it wasn't the same type of writing as The Hearing Trumpet. She also had another book, The Stone Door, that was out of print for a long time. It was recently put back into print by NYRB, and I have not gotten my hands on it yet. However, I'm thinking I might just order it soon because I loved The Hearing Trumpet, and I just want to read more by her like that. So that was what inspired me to pick up the complete stories of Leonora Carrington. This is just a bunch of short stories, and I'm thinking that I'll probably pick this up pretty soon and just kind of start going through the stories like a little bit at a time, just to kind of spread it out a little bit. I have a couple different short story collections that I want to do that with, so I don't know if this will be first or if it's going to be kind of pushed down in the queue, but either way, like I do really want to pick this up because I need something to fill the Hearing Trumpet sized hole in my heart. And I'm hoping that these short stories do that, or at least scratch some sort of itch for me. But anyway, that is the complete stories by Leonora Carrington. One thing I have noticed is like this copy is very square. I don't know what publisher this is. Okay, I looked and apparently it's an imprint of NYRB. Dorothy books, but yeah, it is very square. But this cover is a painting that she did. Most of what Leonora Carrington was known for was her paintings. And one thing that I do really like about a lot of her books is that the editions now use her paintings for the cover art, which I think is just really cool. It's really cool that someone can kind of just do it all like that. So anyway, that is the complete stories. I'm excited. And then lastly, would you be surprised if I told you that this is another book by another author whose stuff that I want to read? Probably not at this point. And that is Killing Stella by Marlon Haushofer. I read The Wall by Marlon Haushofer earlier this year, I think like spring or maybe early summer, and I really liked it. I thought that that was really well done, and I didn't know that she had anything else translated into English at this point. And so when I saw this, I decided I needed to pick it up. This is a tiny little thing. I think this is like 80 pages. So out of any of the books that I have listed here, I think other than Fledgling, I think this is one that I am more likely to get to sooner just because I have a lot of stuff that I want to read while it's still fall, but this seems like something I could kind of fit in pretty quickly. This I didn't know much about. I said I didn't even know that it existed and was translated into English until I picked this up yesterday. But this is supposed to be like a domestic thriller slash horror sort of situation. According to the back, it does kind of have a lot of the same themes and kind of vibes as The Wall. The kind of like claustrophobic and gothic nature of it. That's again what it says in the back. I don't know much about it, but I am excited at the prospect of potentially more Marlon Haushofer stuff being translated into English, and I'm excited to give this one a try. So yeah, that is that. But yeah, those are all of the books that I got yesterday during my little trip to Hudson, New York. I am very excited to get to all of these eventually, and I am very excited that I was able to find so many cool little books in like little fun out of print editions. Another video idea I have is just to kind of go over some of my favorite stupid little vintage covers of books that I have, because I have quite a few. So let me know if you'd be interested in just kind of seeing some of the little dumb vintage covers I have from books that I have read and have not read. But yeah, I think that is all for me right now. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, maybe consider sticking around, maybe consider subscribing, but I don't control your life, so I can't decide that for you. But anyway, thank you for tuning in if you have made it this far, and I will see you in another video soon, hopefully. Bye.